With her calloused hands bleeding into the hard red clay, old Mama Ruth was digging her own secret in the backyard. When her son came home from his trip and saw that sight, the truth she'd kept buried for years finally broke loose. And what she whispered that cold night made a grown man drop to his knees and cry like a little boy. This was back in the late 1890s, when farms stretched out like little forgotten kingdoms across the rolling hills and hollers of Tennessee. The smell of sweet tea brewing on the stove mixed with the scent of blooming honeysuckle on the porch. Big colonial farmhouses stood proud on red clay soil, guarded by fences made of cedar rails. Fences that didn't just mark land, they marked the difference between the world of educated men and the world of women who only knew the wisdom of a hoe and a cast-iron skillet. Back then, dirt roads carried sons far away to growing cities chasing money and dreams, while mothers stayed behind, agging inside clapboard houses, saying their prayers every night and waiting months for a letter that might never come. This was an America where written words could pull hearts together across hundreds of miles or hide truths that cut deeper than any knife. But sometimes, in the quietest corners of those farms, where the whippoorwills called and the evening breeze carried the smell of rain-soaked earth, fate wove meetings no distance could stop. Secrets buried like seeds, just waiting for the right moment to sprout and change everything. Because this is one of those stories our grandmas told around the woodstove when the rain hammered the tin roof and everybody gathered close to listen, stories that shaped generations. If these memories hit you right in the chest, hit that subscribe button and drop in the comments where you're watching from. Let's walk these old Tennessee backroads together. The wagon rattled one last time before it stopped in front of the weathered gate. James Carter stepped down carefully, his polished city boots looking out of place against the red dust that coated everything. 3 months he'd been gone, closing deals in Nashville, shaking hands with colonels and merchants, signing papers that would make his farm bigger than his daddy ever dreamed. He came home tired but proud, the kind of proud a man feels when he's built an empire with his own 2 hands. The big farmhouse stood just like always, tall windows, wide porches, surrounded by ancient pecan trees that had seen 3 generations of Carters. James took a deep breath of that familiar air, Johnson grass and wood smoke mixed with the faint sweetness of Mama's roses. Home smelled like that. Mama smelled like that. Miss Ruth had to be in the kitchen, he figured, fixing supper like she always did when she knew her boy was coming. She was pushing 75, hair pulled back in a tight gray bun, hands rough from a lifetime working the land before James made good. He smiled, thinking how surprised she'd be he'd beat his own letter by 2 whole days. But when he pushed open the gate and walked around to the backyard, his heart froze solid. There under the oldest pecan tree, in the weak moonlight that barely lit the night, was his Mama. Miss Ruth, wearing that same faded black dress she refused to give up, was on her knees in the dirt, digging with an old shovel. Her breath came in short gasps, her hands shaking with every scoop. James dropped his suitcase. The thud made Miss Ruth spin around, eyes wide like a cornered deer. Cradled in her lap, wrapped in an old flour sack towel, was a big bundle. Even in the dim light, James knew what it was, letters. Dozens, maybe hundreds of yellowed letters. "Mama," his voice cracked, "what in God's name are you doing?" Miss Ruth didn't answer. She just clutched the bundle to her chest like she was protecting a dying child. In that heavy silence, James felt something was terribly, terribly wrong. If this story's already tugging at your heart, smash that like button so more folks can feel it too. We'll pick right back up. James stepped closer, slow, like he was approaching a wounded animal. Miss Ruth stayed frozen on her knees in the damp dirt, hugging those letters like they were the body of a lost son. The moonlight carved deep shadows across her wrinkled face, and for the first time ever, James saw fear in her eyes, fear of him. "Mama, please, tell me what's going on." He knelt beside her, reaching out. She shrank back, guarding the letters even tighter. James felt a stab in his chest. "Please, Mama, talk to me." Her lips trembled. When the words finally came, they were thin and broken, soaked in shame. "I'm burying these letters, son. Before I die, I gotta bury 'em. Bury them, why? Miss Ruth nodded, tears shining in the moonlight. They're yours, every single one you ever sent me. For years, ever since James left for the city, he'd mailed letters home every week, sometimes twice. He wrote about deals, about city folks, about how different everything was up there. And every single time he ended with how much he missed her, how she was his anchor, how everything he built was for her. I kept everyone, James, every single one. I can't read, you know that, but I carried 'em to Preacher Thompson every Sunday after church. He'd read 'em to me. James's stomach dropped. Preacher Thompson, the stern old minister with the grey beard who always looked at Miss Ruth like she was beneath him. And, James asked, voice tight. Miss Ruth took a shaky breath, tears finally spilling over. And he always told me, Miss Ruth, he just talks business, says everything's fine, sends his regards, that's all. Never a word of missin' me, never a word of love. The world spun. Mama, what are you talking about? The preacher said it plain, son, every Sunday. He's a big man now, important friends, fancy city life. How could he not be ashamed of a mama who can't even write her own name? James felt the ground disappear beneath him. I understood, she whispered. You grew up. I'm just an old farm woman who never amounted to nothing but plantin' beans and fryin' chicken. I knew I didn't fit in your new world. James realized the horror of it all right there under that pecan tree where he used to climb as a boy, where his mama rocked him to sleep singing hymns. Preacher Thompson had lied. For years, he'd hidden every single word of love James ever wrote. That's why I gotta bury these, Miss Ruth said, clutching the bundle one last time. So when I'm gone, you won't have to look at him and remember you ever had a mama you wanted to forget. What would you have done in his shoes? Drop it in the comments. It only gets heavier from here. James couldn't move. His mama's words rang in his head like funeral bells. He stared at the bundle, then at the half-dug hole, a grave for years of love she never knew existed. Mama, he said, voice shaking, give me those letters. Miss Ruth pulled back. No need to pretend now, son, I already know. Just let me bury 'em, so they don't leave a bad memory. Mama, his voice was steel now, give me the letters. She hesitated, eyes darting between her son and the dark earth. Finally, trembling, she handed them over. James unwrapped the flour-sack towel like it was sacred. Letters spilled into his lap, some yellowed, some water-stained, all treasured. He grabbed the first one he saw, 5 years old, right after his first big land deal. He opened it and started reading out loud, right there in the dirt beside his mama. Dear Mama, today I bought the River Bend place. Good soil, clean creek, green pasture. But you know what I thought about when I signed those papers? I thought about you, hands blistered, planting tomatoes in that little patch when I was a boy. Everything I'm building, Mama, is so you never have to bend over a hoe again. So you can rest knowing your boy made good because of what you taught him. His voice broke. He looked at her. Miss Ruth sat frozen, mouth open, eyes wide like she was witnessing a miracle. You wrote that. Every word, Mama. He grabbed another, 3 years old. Mama, today a businessman asked where I'm from. I told him about our holler. I told him about you, told him how you raised me alone after Daddy died. He said I must be the luckiest man alive to have a mama like you. I told him luck's got nothing to do with it, I'm blessed, because you're the blessing of my life. Miss Ruth covered her face, sobs shaking her whole body. James kept going, letter after letter, reading every I miss you, every I'm proud to be your son, every promise that she was the reason he breathed. With every word, years of pain poured out of her like poison, finally leaving a wound. But the preacher, she choked out, he always said it was just business. The preacher lied, Mama, rage boiled up in James's throat. That man looked down on you like you were nothing, and he stole years of love from us. He stood, reached down, and pulled her up gently. Get up, Mama, you're never burying these letters. We're going inside, and I'm reading every single one to you start to finish, so you'll know I never, ever was ashamed of you. You're my pride, always have been. Miss Ruth gripped his hand like a lifeline, tears streaming free. For the first time in years, James saw hope in her eyes. But when they stepped inside and lit the kerosene lamp, when James was about to sit down and start reading, he saw something that turned his blood to ice. Clutched in his mamma's trembling fingers was a crumpled piece of paper, not a letter, a doctor's prescription. If you were him, what would you do? The hurt's not over yet, tell me below. James snatched the paper before she could hide it. The ink was faded, the paper soft from being folded 1,000 times. Dr. Harlan's handwriting, the country doctor who only came through the holler once a month. What is this, Mammo? Miss Ruth stared at the floorboards. Her hands that could hoe a row straight as an arrow, now shook like leaves. It ain't nothin', son, just old. But James was already reading, strong pain medicine, and at the bottom, in tiny letters, patient advanced stage, palliative care only, dated 6 months ago. Mama, his voice came out like gravel, you're sick. The silence was heavier than a coffin lid. Finally, she nodded, barely. Been a while now. How long? 7, 8 months. Started with pains, tiredness. Went to Dr. Harlan when he came through. He said, ain't much to do. 8 months. 8 months she'd been dying, and he never knew. Why didn't you tell me? Fury and heartbreak fought in his chest. Why didn't you send for me? Miss Ruth looked up, and James saw an ocean of hurt in her eyes. So I could drag you away from your important city life, make you drop everything to take care of an old woman you didn't even. She couldn't finish. Didn't even what, Mama? Didn't even care about anymore. The words exploded out of her, years of bottled pain. The preacher read me empty letters, just business, money, land. I thought you only wrote out a duty. How could I call you home to watch me die? I didn't want to be another burden. James felt punched in the gut. It all made horrifying sense now. She wasn't just a woman who thought her son was ashamed. She was a woman dying alone because she believed nobody cared. I was gonna die quiet, she whispered, die without makin' a fuss. But first I wanted to bury those letters so when you came home and I was gone, you wouldn't have to see 'em and feel guilty. It'd be like I never really existed in your life. No, James crossed the room in 2 strides and pulled her into his arms like he hadn't since he was 5 years old. She stiffened for a second, shocked, then melted, burying her face in his chest and crying like the world was ending. Never say that again, Mama. Never. You're everything to me, everything, and I'll never let you die thinking you weren't loved. They stood there swaying under the flickering lamp, while the letters on the floor bore witness to love that almost got buried forever. But James knew one thing for sure, someone was gonna pay, and that someone was Preacher Thompson. The story just getting started. Hit subscribe so you don't miss what's coming. You're gonna wanna see this. Next morning broke grey and heavy, storm clouds rolling in like Judgment Day. James hadn't slept. He'd spent the night reading every letter aloud, watching his mama's face light up with every word of love she'd never heard. She laughed through tears, touched the pages like holy relics, begged him to read her favorites again. But now, with cold dawn light creeping through the curtains, rage burned in James like a brush fire. Mama, I'm going to the church, he said, jamming his hat on. I gotta talk to Preacher Thompson. Miss Ruth, still weak from the night, grabbed his arm. Don't do nothing foolish, son. He's a man of God. Men of God don't lie, Mama. Men of God don't break mothers' hearts for sport. He kissed her forehead. Rest, I'll be back. The little white church sat in the middle of the holler, steeple reaching up through the cedar trees, bell ringing every morning for prayer. James marched down the dirt road, past humble cabins where folks tipped their hats to Mr. Carter, now that he'd made good. He found Preacher Thompson in the vestry, arranging candles for Sunday service. Tall, stooped, grey beard perfectly trimmed, black suit pressed crisp. Preacher Thompson. James kicked the door shut behind him. The preacher turned, startled. James, heard you were back from Nashville. How? Save it, James's voice cut like a straight razor. You know exactly why I'm here. The preacher's face went white. Something flickered in his eyes, guilt, maybe fear. I don't know what you... Don't, James stepped forward. My mama brought you letters every week for years, begged you to read 'em to her, and you lied. You told her they were nothing but business, made her believe her own son was ashamed of her. The preacher gripped a candle so hard the wax cracked. I thought... You thought, James's voice echoed off the walls. You thought you had the right to play God with my family. Silence fell like a hammer. Finally, the preacher spoke, voice shaking. Because she needed to learn her place. James saw red. Her place. Yes, the preacher's eyes hardened. An illiterate farm woman who can barely sign her name. And you, a man of means, city connections, important friends. I thought it was kinder to help her accept that you, outgrown her, that she no longer belonged in your world. James lunged forward. The preacher stumbled back into the altar. You had no right. I was protecting her, the preacher shouted. Protecting her from the day you'd bring home some educated city girl and she'd realize there was no room for her anymore. You were destroying her. Tears of rage burned James's eyes. My mama's dying, preacher, dying, and she hid it from me because she thought I didn't care, because of your lies, because you convinced her she was worthless. The preacher's face crumpled. She's been sick for months and never told me because you poisoned her mind. You stole years of love we can never get back. The preacher sank into a pew, hands shaking. I didn't know she was sick. I never meant. You should have thought about that before you decided you were God. James turned to leave, then stopped at the door. Because my mama still has faith in you, in the church, in the Lord, I ain't laying a hand on you, but you stay away from her. You ever come near my house, near my mama again, I forget I'm a Christian. You hear me? The preacher didn't answer. James stepped out into the first fat drops of rain. Thunder rolled like heaven itself was angry. But the biggest storm was still coming, because when he got home, he found Miss Ruth on the porch, holding an old wooden box he'd never seen before. And what she said when he walked up stopped his heart cold. Son, there's one more thing I never told you, something I swore I'd take to my grave. You feel that tightness in your chest yet, that need to know what's next? Smash like so this story reaches more hearts. We're going deeper. James climbed the porch steps slow, eyes locked on the box. It was old cedar, lid worn smooth by decades of hands. Miss Ruth held it like it contained her very soul. Mama, what is that? She stared at it a long time before answering, voice heavy with ancient hurt. A story I never told a living soul, not even your daddy, God rest him. A story I swore I'd carry to my grave. James sat beside her on the old swing. Rain started pattering on the tin roof. Why tell me now? Because I don't want secrets between us no more. Tears welled up. After everything, after learning you never was ashamed of me, I can't die holding this. It wouldn't be right. She opened the box with reverent care. Inside, a wooden rosary, a faded photograph of a young couple, and a sealed envelope with red wax. Miss Ruth picked up the envelope, fingers trembling. Your daddy was a good man, James, hard worker, honest, loved me best he could, but when I married him, she drew a shaky breath. I wasn't like other girls, I had a past. James frowned. What kind of past? I loved a man before your daddy. Loved him with that wild young love that feels like it'll last forever. She traced the envelope gently. He wasn't from here, showed up one harvest season, traveling through, beautiful eyes, sweet words, made me laugh like nobody else. We met in secret for months. I was gonna run away with him, James. We had plans. What happened? He vanished, her voice cracked. We were supposed to meet by the creek one night. I waited till dawn. Next day I heard he'd left town. No warning, no note, nothing. Broke my heart clean in two. She pressed the envelope to her heart. My daddy arranged the marriage to your father right after. Good man, owned land, respected. I said yes because, what else was there? The love of my life had abandoned me. James didn't know what to say. Seeing his strong mama talk about a lost love from 50 years ago felt like meeting a stranger. 1 year after I married your daddy, this arrived. She handed him the envelope. A peddler brought it, said a dying man paid him to deliver it to me. James's hands shook. You want me to read it? She nodded. Now I do. After all these years, I want to hear it again, but this time from my son's voice, the son I know loves me. James broke the wax seal. The paper was brittle, ink faded, but the words were still there. He read aloud, and with every line he understood why she'd hidden it so long. It was a love so deep the man chose to die alone rather than watch her suffer with him. A love that fled to spare her pain, regrets, sleepless nights, and one final plea. Be happy, my love. Find someone who can give you the life I never could. And if you ever have a child, teach him to love bravely, not to run like I did, but to stay like you always were, courageous. When James finished, they were both crying. Miss Ruth leaned her head on his shoulder, something she hadn't done since he was little. Know why I'm telling you this, son, she whispered, because now I understand. Sometimes we hide pain thinking we are protecting the ones we love. He left thinking he was saving me. I hid my sickness thinking I was saving you. James held her tight. No more hidden, mama, no more secrets, no more fear. Whatever time you got left, we're living it together, real and true, like it should have always been. Miss Ruth smiled through tears. That's all I ever wanted, baby. And there, on that creaky porch, rain falling soft and steady, mother and son finally found the peace they'd both been chasing their whole lives. If this one's got you misty, share it with somebody you love. Sometimes the people closest to us need to hear it too. The weeks that followed were the happiest James had known since childhood. He cancelled every trip, postponed every deal, and stayed on the farm tending his mama. He read old letters every night, told her city stories, and Miss Ruth laughed and cried and finally looked light again. He hired a kind woman, Mrs. Ellie, to help around the house, but James insisted on making Mama's tea himself every morning, carrying her to the porch to feel the sun, pushing her in the old swing while fireflies blinked in the dusk. You're spoilin' me rotten, Miss Ruth would tease. I'm mackin' up for lost time, he'd answer, and even if I had 1,000 years, it wouldn't be enough. She bloomed, color came back to her cheeks, sparkle to her eyes. See, Mama, you were just heartsick. Now that we're together, you're getting stronger. But deep down, James knew it was a lie. The cancer didn't care about love. The doctor had been clear. Still, James clung to hope like a drowning man to driftwood. Then came the morning that shattered everything. James woke to a scream, raw animal pain ripping through the house. He bolted down the hall, heart in his throat, and threw open her door. Miss Ruth was on the floor beside the bed, clutching her chest, face twisted in agony. Mama! He dropped beside her, gathering her up. She was so light now, so terribly light. Where's it hurt? It's back, worse than ever. Panic flooded him. He carried her to bed, ran for the laudanum the doctor left, hands shaking so bad he nearly spilled it. Drink, Mama, please. She swallowed, grimacing at the bitter taste. He held her head gentle, stroked her hair, whispered every comforting word he knew until, after an eternity, the medicine kicked in and her face relaxed. I'm sorry, baby, she whispered. Scared you. Never be sorry, tears streamed down his face. I'm calling the doctor, there's gotta be something stronger. Ain't nothing stronger, son, she squeezed his hand with surprising strength. We both know that. Then I'm taking you to Nashville, best doctors, hospitals. James, her voice was firm despite the weakness. Stop, please. I can't just watch you suffer. You already did more than any son ever could. She smiled, sad but real. You gave me back the one thing I thought I'd lost forever, my boy's love. You showed me I was never a burden. That's better than any medicine. James buried his face in her lap and sobbed. I ain't ready to lose you, Mama. Nobody ever is, baby, but life don't ask if we're ready. She stroked his hair like when he was small. What matters ain't how long we get, it's what we do with the time we have. The days blurred after that. Good days when she could sit on the porch and listen to James read. Bad days when pain pinned her to the bed and all he could do was hold her hand. One quiet dawn, when the roosters hadn't even crowed, she called him. James, come here. He stumbled in, still half asleep from the chair beside her bed. You hurtin', I'll get the... No pain, she patted the bed. Sit. He sat, she took his hand with more strength than he expected. I need to ask you something important. Anything, Mama, name it. Go to the church, talk to Preacher Thompson. James went rigid. Mama, after what he... I know what he did. I know he lied and hurt me deep. But he's an old man, alone, carrying his own guilt, and I don't want to die with hate in my heart. You ain't got hate, I do. Exactly, she looked straight into his eyes. And I don't want you carrying that hate after I'm gone. I want you to remember me with love, not bitterness. James closed his eyes. She was right. The rage was eating him alive. You want me to forgive him? I want you to free yourself, baby. Forgiveness ain't for the one who hurt you, it's for the one carrying the hurt. Let it go so it don't rot inside you. James walked to the church that afternoon like he was walking to his own execution. Preacher Thompson was in the vestry again, older, grayer, shoulders more stooped. He looked up, and fear flashed across his face. James, I'm only here because my mama asked me to come. James stayed in the doorway. She's dying, days now, maybe hours. The preacher aged 10 years in a second. I didn't know it was that bad. Can I come, give last rites? No, James's voice was iron. But she don't want to die hateful. She said forgiveness is for the one who suffered. So I'm tellin' you I ain't forgot what you did. Never will. But I ain't lettin' it eat me alive anymore. Because my mama deserves her last days to be about love, not revenge. And I deserve to live after she's gone without this poison in my soul. The preacher stared, stunned. You're forgiven me. I'm setting myself free. James turned to leave, then paused. But you can do one thing. You can learn. You can treat every poor, uneducated soul who walks through that door with the respect they deserve. Remember, there's a whole heart behind every calloused hand. The preacher nodded, tears rolling down his cheeks. I will, I swear on my Bible. James walked out into bright sunshine. For the first time in weeks, his chest didn't feel crushed. When he got home and told his mama, I did it, Mama, I let it go, the smile she gave him was worth every ounce of pride he swallowed. I knew you would, she whispered, because you're good, always were. That night, for the first time in forever, James slept without rage in his heart. Could you forgive? Tell me in the comments. We're almost at the end, and it's gonna break you wide open. Miss Ruth held on 2 more weeks, 2 weeks James would treasure forever. He never left the farm. Mornings reading letters, afternoons talking about old times, nights just holding her hand while cicadas sang outside. Mrs. Ellie helped, but James did the sacred things himself, making cornbread, washing her hair, changing sheets. Things big-shot men would call beneath them. For James, they were pure love. You're spoilin' me silly, Miss Ruth laughed weakly. Tryin' to make up for 30 lost years, he'd say, still won't be enough. One perfect afternoon, she asked to sit under the pecan tree. Sun warm, breeze gentle. James carried her out, light as a sparrow, and settled her in the old rocking chair. Remember when you were little, she said, gazing at the yard where chickens scratched. You'd run wild, chasing butterflies, covered head to toe in red dirt. I'd holler and wave a switch, but I was laughin' inside. James grinned from his spot on the ground. You never could stay mad. They talked for hours, city stories, childhood stories, daddy stories. Fireflies came out like tiny lanterns. Know what I regret most, she said suddenly. What, Mama? Not livin' more, life goes so fast. Seems like yesterday I was rockin' you to sleep, and now here you are, a grown man takin' care of me. She looked at him, eyes shining. If I could do it over, I'd work less, laugh more, hug you more, tell you I loved you every single day. You told me every day, Mama, in your way. Not enough, she touched his cheek, but I'm tellin' you now I love you, James Carter, more than anything in this world. You were the best thing I ever did, the only thing I did completely right. James climbed up and held her careful, feeling her fragile bones. I love you more than every acre I own, more than every dollar, more than life. That night she was weaker. James sat beside her bed, holding her hand as sleep pulled at her. James, I'm right here, Mama. I ain't scared to die anymore, because now I know I was loved, I mattered, my life meant something. She squeezed his hand. You gave me that, baby, you gave me peace. Don't talk like that, you're gonna get better. No, darling, and it's okay, I'm tired, so tired, but it's a good tired, the kind you earn from livin', lovin', bein' happy at the end. James couldn't stop crying. I don't know how to live without you. You'll live better than ever, keep buildin', keep lovin', and when the wind rattles the windows or the smell of wood smoke fills the house, you'll feel me smillin', promise you'll smile back. I promise. Good boy, she smiled, eyes fluttering shut. Always my good boy. That night, with her hand in his and the Tennessee stars wheeling overhead, Miss Ruth slipped away peaceful, surrounded by love, knowing she was cherished to her last breath. Could you handle an ending like this? Tell me below, just the epilogue left. 3 years later, James still lived in the old farmhouse. He turned down big offers from Nashville developers who wanted to pave over his memories. This land had roots. This land had love. Every morning he walked to the backyard. Under the oldest pecan tree, he'd planted a rose garden, white roses, Mama's favorite. He tended them like children. Mornin', Mama, he'd say, watering the blooms. Miss you something fierce. But it wasn't a hurting missing. It was the warm kind that made him smile through tears. He never married. A few good women came close, but none felt right, and that was okay. The farm thrived. He paid fair wages, helped neighbors, donated books to the little school every month, because his mama never got to learn to read, and he'd be damned if any child in that holler suffered the same. Preacher Thompson was still alive, older, quieter, kinder. Every Sunday he held a special prayer for Miss Ruth's soul. James never asked him to. It was the preacher's way of making amends, and James respected it. The letters lived in a special cedar box in the parlor. On quiet nights when the ache got too big, James would open it, read his own words of love, and swear he heard her voice answering back. One morning, while he watered the roses, Mrs. Ellie called from the porch. "Mr. James, there's a young lady here to see you." James wiped his hands and walked to the gate. A girl in her 20s stood there, simple dress, holding a small package. "Mornin'," she said shyly. "You James Carter?" "Yes, ma'am, how can I help?" She handed him the package. "My granny passed last month. Before she went, she made me promise to bring this to you, said it was real important." James unwrapped it slow. Inside was the wooden rosary from Mama's box, the one that belonged to her first love, and a letter in Miss Ruth's shaky handwriting. His knees nearly buckled. He opened it with trembling fingers. "My dearest James, if you're reading this, I'm already home with the Lord. I hope I went peaceful with you holding my hand. I hope you know you gave me the greatest gift a mama could ever get, dying knowing I was loved. I asked my friend Mrs. Ellie's mama to hold this letter and deliver it after I was gone. There's things a body can only say when they ain't here no more. Thank you, son. Thank you for comin' home. Thank you for reading me every letter. Thank you for showing me I was never a burden, that I was always your world. You gave me peace. This rosary belonged to the man I loved before your daddy. I kept it all these years because it was all I had left of him. But now I want you to have it, not as a sad memory, but as proof that real love never dies. It just changes shape. I'm with you always, baby, in the wind, in the pecan trees, in the smell of cornbread bacon, in every sunrise over these hills. One day when it's your time, I'll be waiting with open arms and a big plate of fried chicken. Till then, live, love, build, be happy. And if you ever have a little one of your own, tell him about his grandma. Tell him his life started with the love of a woman he never met, but who loved him fierce from the moment he was a spark in God's eye. I love you, James, always have, always will. Your mama, who adores you. Ruth. James didn't realize he was crying until the tears blurred the ink. He pressed the rosary to his heart, looked up at the wide Tennessee sky, and whispered, I love you too, Mama, and I'll tell everyone I meet about the strongest, wisest woman who ever lived. Right then, with the letter in one hand and the roses blooming behind him, James understood. We don't really die as long as somebody remembers us with love. Miss Ruth lived on, in every white rose, in every story he told, in the heart she'd shaped with her rough, loving hands. Because some things time can't erase, not a mama's love, not the memory of someone who changed your life, and definitely not the promise that one day, when our work here is done, there's somebody waiting on the other side with a smile and a hug that lasts forever. If this story wrecked you in the best way, subscribe and hit that bell. Share it with someone who needs to call their mama today. We've got more Tennessee soul stories coming, each one straight from the heart of our people. And who knows, maybe the next one will be yours.